All right, we can go ahead and begin. Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Golly, and I am a community organizer with Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for this webinar to learn more about the Cancer Gag Act and how we can work together to protect our communities and the people and places we love throughout this legislative session. Tonight, as you are coming into the webinar, we have a Q&A section down at the very bottom. So as you have questions throughout the night, if you move your mouse around on your Zoom, you may see at the very bottom a box with a question mark in it. That is our Q&A section. If you don't see it, you might have to click the More option. We'll have time for questions towards the end of the presentations tonight. So please don't be bashful. Any questions you have, big or small, put them on in there and we're happy to discuss through it with you tonight. From there, we will go ahead and walk through our agenda. So yes, we will go ahead and kick things off here as we've done just now. We'll have an introduction into the organizations who are part of this coalition working to defeat the Cancer Gag Act. Then we'll have 3 presentations from PAN, the Pesticide Action Network. We will have Dr. Deming and then Nick Shute. After that, we'll have about 10 minutes for questions and close out with ways to take action together. So kicking things off, like I mentioned, I'm Caitlin with Iowa CCI. Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement is a statewide organization, and we believe that policymaking is the people's business. It's our business. It shouldn't be done behind closed doors, and it shouldn't be done by corporations. The people most directly impacted by an issue should be the ones in the driver's seat for change. And we should be the ones crafting decisions, crafting solutions, and working for a brighter future. We are all in this together. Our health and well-being is connected, and we can accomplish more together than we can alone. In short, we believe that democracy should work for us, for all of us, no exceptions, and to make the changes we want to see for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for our communities, that we need to work together. With that, I will pass it off. Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself and the org?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Brion from Food and Water Watch, and Food and Water Watch is a national environmental advocacy organization that focuses on connections between the food system and water quality and climate change. And here in Iowa, that means we often advocate around factory farms. And so our entire industrial agriculture system in Iowa is connected with the factory farm animal food system and the use of pesticides that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we are very much like CCI, we are a grassroots advocacy organization, and so we mobilize folks in their communities. Our motto is fight like you live here, and so that's why we're here.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. Iowa Environmental Council, do you want to introduce yourselves next?
Sure, thank you. My name is Michael Schmidt. I'm the General Counsel at the Iowa Environmental Council, or IEC. And IEC is the largest environmental coalition of groups in Iowa with 100 member organizations and hundreds of individual members. Our work focuses on clean water, clean energy, climate, and environmental justice. We engage on federal, state, and local public policy, and we work to engage Iowans statewide to build a just, healthy environment and a more sustainable future for all Iowans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rob will introduce himself when we have his presentation. Jen Sinkler, would you like to introduce yourself and Progress Iowa?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks, Caitlin. Hi all, I'm Creative Director with Progress Iowa. My name is Jen Sinkler. If you have not connected with someone on our team somewhere already, Progress Iowa is a progressive communications hub and advocacy organization as well. We work with people on messaging guidance based on research from our messaging director, Katie Siddle, on a pretty large range of issues from healthcare to the economy to pollution and rural issues. And as usual, regarding tonight's topic, we are in this all together. We host weekly briefings on what's happening in the State House and beyond every Friday afternoon. We help facilitate people's writing in a variety of publications. We've got a letters to the editor and article writing group each Monday at 4. You can plug into our digital organizing team, or if you prefer gathering in person, we get together every other Friday afternoon starting at 3 p.m. in our office in Des Moines and make issues-centered art. And we'll start that up again on January 24th, and we'll focus on the Cancer Gag Act. And just noting that you do not have to be a trained artist to join in on that. I know there will be a lot of opportunities for action coming out of tonight, so I want to mention just one more that can also apply to this topic. If you're so inclined to write an essay, make a video, share poetry, paint, or any other type of expression that you're called toward about tonight's topic or anything adjacent, we're really close to launching a new Substack called Rural Routes, and we would love to share what it is that you have to say. So I'll drop that information maybe in the follow-up. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jen. Ava, you can go to the next slide. And we also just want to take a moment to uplift that Great Plains Action Society is also a part of our coalition, and note that they are taking a step back. Nicole Rains has been the representative for GPAS in our coalition, and we just want to take a moment to honor her and the work that she's done in this coalition, and note that she is no longer with us. She recently passed away, so GPAS is just taking a step back. So we want to uplift Nicole here, thank her for her work as we continue to work to defeat the Cancer Gag Act. Ava, you can go to the next slide. Here are our coalition logos to defeat the Cancer Gag Act. And the next slide, please. And just one more basic overview of our agenda. We're going to get a bill overview with Rob from the Pesticide Action Network. We'll have an oncologist perspective with Dr. Deming, the legal perspective, and then the rural Iowans perspective and how we are being impacted with cancer rates and all from Nick Shute. We'll have a 10-minute Q&A, and then we'll close out with ways to take action. So with that, I will pass it off to Rob to introduce yourself, the Pesticide Action Network, and give your presentation.
Good evening. As mentioned, my name is Rob Fox. I work for the Pesticide Action and Agroecology Network, but I am also a few other things. I am a farmer in Northeast Iowa, and I'm also a cancer survivor. So this topic actually has direct impact in my daily life, and which is one of the reasons I'm here today. The other reason I'm here today is I'm a communications manager for Pesticide Action Network. And our job is more of what we would call a grass tops organization. We have scientists on our staff, and we have some farming expertise from me on the staff. And what we try to do is we try to help grassroots organizations in the process of trying to advocate for policy change for the people on the ground by providing materials, providing support, which is what we're doing today. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to run through the basics of how we deal with the rules of pesticides and the application of pesticides in the United States, and how this particular bill will change the way that works. And when we're done with this, I think you all have a good idea of what the reasons are for why we would like to stop these bills from being passed. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remind everybody, in case you don't already know, what are the tools that exist in the United States today that protect people from potential pesticide harms. First and foremost, on the national level, we've got a law called FIFRA, and that law directs the EPA to make sure that pesticides will not cause an unreasonable risk to human health and the environment, as long as those pesticides are used as instructed. So what the EPA then does is that they assess the safety of the active ingredients of a pesticide, they approve registrations, and then they create what are known as use labels. and those use labels come with the product. And the use label may include everything from how you apply the product safely, at least from what they see. And they may also include warnings as to possible acute injuries, which would be short term, things like maybe problems breathing or sunburning or things like that, or maybe sometimes possible chronic or long-term injuries. Perhaps, I mean, the thing that comes to mind for a lot of us would be cancer, for example, might be one of those things. But generally speaking, they focus more on the acute injuries. So that's the first part. We've got the EPA acting under the law that is FIFRA. Let's go to the next slide. All right, here are the other two parts that we have for protecting people from possible pesticide harms in the United States. Each state has an agricultural branch of the executive branch, and many of them have somewhere inside that branch a pesticide bureau or a group of individuals who are responsible for enforcing the use labels. So, for example, in Iowa, if there is a report that somebody possibly has used a pesticide without following the use label, that report gets investigated by the Pesticide Bureau in Iowa. Now, I want to make this very clear. This would then be a citizen or a person nearby who is affected that makes the report. The state does not have a whole bunch of people running around trying to make sure everything is being applied properly. But this is how it tends to work. So the state is usually involved in enforcement. The result is typically, if there is found to be a problem, a fine, typically relatively small. And in rare cases, there might be a problem or a change in the application license that the person holds. The third part of protection comes through the judiciary. What the judiciary does is it provides a tool for individuals like you and I to hold a corporation accountable if they have failed to warn us about a known possible harm. Okay, and that's the key thing right there, is if there is a known possible harm and we do not have access to an appropriate warning saying this could happen to you if you are exposed to this product, then we can bring potentially a lawsuit, which is called a failure to warn lawsuit, in an effort to try and seek remediation when that happens. So in other words, what I'm saying is that currently, if a use label doesn't provide us with a warning and the corporate entity failed to provide that warning by either informing the EPA with proper notification, so it could be on the use label, or they just don't divulge it in any way, shape, or form, then somebody could bring a case that is successful. That was the dry part of the whole presentation. We'll see if we can make it a little more exciting now. Let's go to the next slide. So now that we have a basic idea of how things are supposed to work, you can argue whether you think it's good enough or not. That's aside from the point. The point is that there are bills that are showing up, and these bills showed up in multiple states last year, including Iowa. The good news is in each of those states, it was defeated last year. They did not pass any of these. However, in 2025, we expect that probably every state in the nation will see one of these bills showing up, and Iowa is certainly among them. And in fact, a bill has already gotten to the second reading in Missouri's legislature this year. So it's already moving. So the bill language is essentially this. The bill would say that the use label provided by the EPA, regardless of what it says, as long as it is a use label provided by the EPA, will provide sufficient warning of possible harm, regardless of whether it is accurate or not. All right, we need to take that home with us and remember what this says is that that EPA label, the use label, is all that is required. All right, so now what you have effectively done is you have removed that third leg of protection, the judiciary, from the protection provided by government against possible pesticide harm. Now, if you're looking for things like this, you might notice organizations like PAN or some of those that are here today, CCI, we might also use language like this is a bill for lawsuit immunity from pesticide companies, or we might call it failure to warn bill language. Or of course, the Cancer Gag Act. One of those things will show up and you'll know we're talking about trying to stop these bills. On the other hand, the pesticide industry, primarily led by Bayer, which is based in Germany, is using a control weeds not farming campaign. Their argument is that if you don't pass this bill, they will take glyphosate away. That is essentially the language they're using, is that glyphosate will go away. Essentially, there's a problem with that, and I think we'll get to that with the next slide. All right, so here's the impact of the bill. The impact of the bill is that if you, me, anyone in this call is ever injured by a pesticide, and we find that the use label was not an appropriate warning, and we find that the pesticide company was not forthcoming with known risks, then that means that farmers who have suffered from Parkinson's, possibly due to paraquat, all those cases that are being held right now or being listened to right now, they won't happen because it won't just be Bayer that will get lawsuit immunity. ChemChina will also get lawsuit immunity, so will Corteva. Every pesticide will have this applied to it. It means that those workers who have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, they couldn't seek any compensation for exposure because of glyphosate. And of course, if you've got people who are having problems with birth defects from Dactyl or brain injury from chlorpyrifos, once again, you'd have no recourse. So this bill grants immunity to all pesticide companies, and it doesn't matter if they're based in the US, China, Germany, or anywhere else. They will all get immunity. Let's look at the next slide. So I wanted to point this out. This is a good talking point for you if you're trying to make the point that this is a bad bill. We need to remember that use labels provided the EPA are not perfect. And I think that's what this bill is trying to say is a use label is perfect. There are no holes. Therefore, there's no reason for the courts to be involved. But we need to remember a few things. When we look at a pesticide, they get re-registered or reviewed every 15 years if everything goes well. Usually it takes longer than that. So it takes a long time for us to actually respond to learned problems with a pesticide. The second problem is they only are looking at active ingredients. They're not looking at the rest of the formulation of a pesticide. And some of those additional ingredients are actually as dangerous or more dangerous than the active ingredient itself. The other thing that I want to point out is that pesticide companies are not forthcoming with all of the known dangers. This is why Bayer has lost, or Monsanto has lost, lawsuits pertaining to glyphosate, is because they have found record that they had knowledge of potential problems. Another example is the more recent issues with dicamba, where it was discovered that they already knew that pesticide would drift and damage other crops before they re-released it. They just didn't tell the EPA that they knew about the problem. So those are some things we need to take care of and we need to think about. The EPA is not able to give us a perfect use label with all of the warnings involved. So it is ridiculous to simply say that that is good enough, because it won't be. Let's look at the next slide. Now, just a quick reminder, one of the arguments being used is this is to stop frivolous litigation. And I would like to remind everybody that typically litigation is not easy. Typically litigation is brought because somebody is suffering and in great pain. This is not a situation, if you have a lymphoma or if you are dealing with other symptoms that are, well, cancer. I don't think cancer is a laughing matter. I've been through it. It's no fun. You're scared the whole time you're doing it. It's just a silly thing for us to think that if there was a possible cause and somebody was maybe responsible for not warning me that I'd be exposed to a cancer-causing agent, that maybe we can go through the process. But the last point on that I'd like to make is, remember, Bayer has now lost numerous cases on Monsanto's behalf for Roundup products. These cases aren't easy to win, and yet they've been won. This tells us that there are situations out there where failure to warn was not met. And being difficult cases to win, and we're winning them, that gives you an idea of why Bayer is so interested in passing this law. And finally, take a look at the bottom. The main motivation that Bayer is pushing this, and Bayer has been behind this in all 50 states, is because they're trying to limit their liability. They're smarting because they have lost cases and they owe money, and they would like to not to owe more. But the whole point of the matter is these lawsuits provide an opportunity with the process called discovery, the discovery process, that allows research into what did this corporation know and when did they know it. And if they knew it prior to the point I was exposed to a dangerous chemical and was injured, then they are responsible because they did not warn me appropriately. So this is more an attempt for Bayer to limit their liability, and they are fine if the other chemical companies come along for the ride and get the same thing. It's not about the Iowa farmers' right to use their product. That product isn't going to go away. We're not telling them it's going to go away. What we're saying is we need to have the right to hold that company or that corporation liable. Let's look at the next slide. I want you to see a few maps before I start to pass this on. These are 3 different maps of pesticides used in the United States from, I believe, 2018, 2019, in that period. And because this is an Iowa-based group, I want you to look carefully where the state of Iowa is located. And look how dark that area is. Those are the highest levels of pesticide use for each of these things. And each of these things have been shown to have potentially dangerous side effects, dangerous problems with them. So here we have Iowa in the middle of it all. Let's look at the next slide. On your left would be the use of glyphosate for 2019. And once again, Iowa's in the middle of it. I'm not saying it's all about Iowa. What I'm saying is look where it is. And I'm setting up Dr. Deming here by pointing out a map on the right. A recent study was showing a map of all cancers. And I think by now most people have heard the news that Iowa is now #2 in the nation for cancer incidence rates and has been increasing in cancer incidence. And I wonder if it's any surprise to you if you take a look at these 2 maps and look at the obvious comparison and similarities. Let's look at the next slide. Here's your takeaways. Bayer is concerned about profit, not our people. They're concerned about protecting themselves from liability. Okay? And the legislature guaranteeing the people's option for a day in court would be far better to protect our right to hold those corporations accountable. I would rather see a bill that made sure we protected that right rather than one that took it away. Thank you for listening and considering my words.
Thank you so much, Rob. So just a couple of notes here before we go into Dr. Deming's presentation. We do want to uplift that we will be having a rally at the Capitol on February 10th. Michaelan will be putting that link to register and join us in the chat. You'll see it multiple times throughout the webinar tonight, but we just want to make sure you have a chance to see that. So if you want to join us in rallying and occupying the rotunda in the Capitol to demand that we defeat the Cancer Gag Act and that our legislators use their power to help us do so, please go ahead and follow the link. You can save it in the chat for now, but stay tuned here for Dr. Deming's presentation. Dr. Deming, will you please introduce yourself and share your presentation with us?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dick Deming. I'm Medical Director of the Mercy One Cancer Center here in Des Moines and founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. I have been practicing here in Iowa for 35 years. As a cancer doctor, it's very important to me that one patient at a time, I try to do my best to improve the health of my patients. But as someone who lives in Iowa, it's also important to me to take care of the community and also to take care of the environment, because ultimately everything is all linked. You can't separate the health of the environment from the health of the community and the health of individuals. So I'm going to give a brief presentation showing you a bit about what's going on with cancer in Iowa. and then talk a bit about modifiable risk factors, and how to put that in perspective. You know, we all have opportunities to reduce our own risk, and that includes lots of things that you may or may not know about, and then share a little bit about the research specifically linking agricultural chemicals to the increased risk of cancer. So let me share my slides here. So I've just entitled this Cancer in Iowa, and the Iowa Cancer Registry puts out a report once a year. This is the 2024 report. The 2025 report will come out February 25th of this year. But so this is the most recent published results. And you can go to Iowa Cancer Registry website or just type in your browser Cancer in Iowa, and this report will come up. It's a very nice report that gives you all the statistics on cancer in Iowa. Some of the highlights is that Iowa continues to have the second highest incidence of cancer and the fastest growing rate of all of the states in the United States. So in the entire United States this year, 2025, there will be over 2 million new cases of cancer, and there will be over 600,000 individuals who will die of cancer this year. In the state of Iowa, we will have 21,000 new cases, and over 6,000 Iowans will die this year of cancer. This is also a graph or a diagram from the Cancer in Iowa 2024, and the statistics are broken down. Now, why do we have such great statistics on cancer? You may not know it, but cancer is a reportable disease. So we have to report all of the cases of cancer. So we have great statistics on cancers, which cancers, where the cancers occur, and that is very useful information, especially when we start to compare the use of, well, let me just say, when we compare all modifiable risk factors, not just ag chemicals, but everything, and try to see why certain counties might have a higher incidence of cancer. This shows you what the new cancers are in the state of Iowa. When you look at the leading types of cancer, Iowa isn't much different from the rest of the country. The most common cancers that we see are breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, colorectal. You can see the list there. Although Iowa is number 2 in incidence, I will say that we are much lower in terms of the death rate. So we have a very high incidence, but we have very good health care in Iowa. And so we are much farther down in terms of rankings in terms of cancer deaths. So what does the term modifiable risk factor mean? Modifiable risk factor, it means that we have the opportunity to control the risk factors. Almost 50% of cancers in the United States are caused by modifiable risk factors, things that we have control over. Still, the number 1 modifiable risk factor in the country and in Iowa is cigarette smoking. Cigarette smoking is not illegal, it's not immoral. Both of my parents died of cigarette smoking, but we know that there are public policy issues that can be implemented to reduce smoking. The number 1 public health policy that reduces the use of smoking is cigarette taxes. Other modifiable risk factors include obesity. Being obese significantly increases your risk of cancer, as does poor diet, meaning too many calories, too much highly processed food, the lack of fruits and vegetables in your diet. Physical inactivity increases the risk of cancer. And if you put those 3 together, excess body weight, poor diet, and physical activity, those cause almost as many cancers as cigarette smoking. Other causes of cancer, you just heard recently in the last week, the Surgeon General's report on alcohol consumption. Alcohol increases the risk of 7 different types of cancer. Ultraviolet exposure, skin cancer, including melanoma. Infections, human papillomavirus, hepatitis B and C, Epstein-Barr virus, Helicobacter pylori bacteria. Those all increase the risk of cancer. Radon. Radon is not a pollutant. It's not something that gets put into the environment by man. It's part of the geological process. And just by the way things work out, Iowa is sitting on a very large bed of radon. But last is environmental exposures. That includes ag chemicals, but not just ag chemicals. I mean, we know about PFASs and microplastics and all sorts of things that we are exposed to. Ag chemicals include fertilizers, nitrates, herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, fungicides. Here is a map that Rob already showed, and I'm just showing it again. This visual is quite dramatic. If you look at this, is the particular one is on the left is the map of the use of glyphosates, and on the right the same map that is the incidence of cancer. Some people say, oh, we just don't have enough evidence that links chemicals to cancer, and I would beg to differ. There are thousands of studies out there, some, direct science and some more correlation. This is just one of the more recent articles. This was published July of 2024. The title of the article is Comprehensive Assessment of Pesticide Use Patterns and Increased Cancer Risk. And the conclusion of the article is that there's an association of pesticide use and increased risk of leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, bladder, colon, lung, and pancreatic cancer. And all of these cancers combined, the comparable risk is essentially equal to cigarette smoking. I'm going to stop sharing and just say, when it comes to modifiable risk factors, it's risks and benefits. So whether you choose to smoke or not, if you know the risks, you have, the personal liberty to do that. Alcohol consumption, we would have less cancer, fewer cancers in the country if we outlawed alcohol. We tried doing that once before. It was called prohibition. It didn't work. Its risks and benefits. The Attorney General's point on alcohol was that, over 90% of Americans know that cigarette smoking causes cancer. Fewer than 50% of Americans know that alcohol causes cancer. So his point, there wasn't new evidence linking it. We'd known the link, but to make sure that individuals know so that they can choose and make a decision about the benefits of alcohol use and the risks and make the right decisions. With ag chemicals, it's the same way. My perspective is, I'm not trying to throw the ag industry under the bus. I know that there are benefits from using ag chemicals. I suspect that there are studies that link improvement in crop production with the use of ag chemicals. But we also have to know the risks. And if we don't know the risks, we can't make an intelligent decision about the risk-benefit ratio. And I would also say, just like cigarette smoking, there are public health measures that can help mitigate the risks. So if we know the risks, we can also know what are things that we can do, we as individuals, we as agriculture can do to try to keep the chemicals that provide agricultural benefit where they provide the benefit and prevent them from getting to all of us. So right now, most of the measures in Iowa are totally voluntary. What if there were carrots and sticks or incentives and penalties? So again, there are many things that I personally choose to do that increases my risk of cancer, consuming alcohol, eating processed foods sometimes. There are things that I do that increase my risk of death, like jumping out of airplanes and helicopter skiing. But I make those decisions, but you have to know the risks and the benefits. And then you have to have proper measures in place to help mitigate the risks with penalties and incentives to try to help improve the outcome and the health of individuals. So I'm going to stop it there, but I'm open to questions. Anything related to cancer, happy to talk about. And I'm going to stop. I guess I've stopped sharing, and I'll turn it back over to our moderator. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deming. And just wow, especially seeing these maps, it is shocking to see that correlation, but we know it, we have the data. We're going to uplift one more opportunity here, not the last time again, to go ahead and register for February 10th for this rally so our legislators can hear from us about the Cancer Gag Act and how Iowans are being directly impacted. Our next speaker is Nick Shute, an Iowa CCI member, Food and Water Watch member. He's going to share his personal story with us. So Nick, whenever you're ready, you can come on camera and off mute. And we'd love to hear from you.
All right. I'm not sure how to get my camera back on, but start video. Anyways, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Nick.
All right. Seeing me is probably not such a bad deal. Anyways, here we go. There we go. Anyways, I'd like to thank you for meeting with us today. My name is Nick Shute. I'm from Alden, Iowa. I work for Hamilton County Solid Waste, located in Hamilton County. I'm a farmer, and I also work in town. I'm a proud CCI member and a Food and Water Watch member. Working in town is a job I love and a place I feel like I can truly make a difference. I also farm part-time with our family farm. An excellent place to bring my grandkids back and spend some quality time with them. Family is very important to me, as I'm sure it's important to all of you. My family is very close and live close by here in central Iowa. One day in 2013, my mom got a call from her sister, my aunt. She was admitted to the hospital for issues regarding severe back pain. We all assumed an onset of kidney stones, but later on, diagnosis show she had a kidney with a mass on it, and it was cancerous. So after some discussion, she went under surgery and had her kidney removed without any further complications. Her family dodged a bullet without any further treatment. Unfortunately, a year later, my mother was experiencing the same symptoms. So mom took advice from her sister to get it looked at, and nevertheless, mom had the same diagnosis. She had kidney cancer. The same thing as what her sister had the year before. But mom didn't have just kidney cancer. She also had bladder cancer as well. They removed mom's kidney and is still receiving treatment for bladder cancer, as the only treatment is to burn off the new growth that reappears. As far as my father goes, he's had his bouts of cancer also. Being a male with breast cancer and the removal of his right breast, which is rare in a male. And he's also had a bout with prostate cancer with rounds of chemo and radiation to treat. I have two brothers, two sisters. One brother had his thyroid removed from cancer, and the other brother had a parathyroid with a growth on it, also removed. My youngest sister had abnormal cervical cells, which prompted a hysterectomy, a double mastectomy. She's my youngest sister who never had the chance to have any children. What else could happen? Last year, my oldest sister, who was 57 years old, a nurse in Des Moines, and a mother of two kids, a grandmother of 8 grandkids, went in for a checkup for low energy. She came out knowing that she also had a cancerous kidney. What's the chance of 3 family members having 3 cancerous kidneys? Tammy was a fighter. She did everything the doctors told her to do, took every treatment she was advised to do. Tammy's cancer spread from her kidney to her liver and finally to her lungs. She passed almost a year after her diagnosis with cancer at the age of 56. That's way too young for anyone. With all of her history, the grandkids are told to get checked out if experiencing any symptoms. I found myself having a few issues with back pain and issues with my bladder. I went to get checked out in October 2024. I listed my family history and my symptoms. The ultrasound was issued and a cyst was revealed, not on one of my kidneys, but both of them, as well as some prostate issues in which we are planning the stage for treatment right now. But with all the bouts of cancer in my family, plus numerous cancers on my father's side, when does someone or some agency or some medical clinic take note and say, this is not right? There's too much directly tied to my family, tied to this area. After all, I was ranked number 2 in the nation for cancer. I truly believe chemicals in the water we drink, as we all grew up on rural water and were exposed to, in our major factor on how much cancer we've had in the family. I feel like we need accountability here in Iowa. Where I work at the Hamilton County Solid Waste, we are required to do a continuous education on the chemicals and spills we come in contact with and may have happened on site. The DNR says any spill over 5 gallons in quantity is a reportable offense. So how is it a spill of 5 gallons is a reportable offense to the DNR, and farmers can apply tens of thousands of gallons of glyphosate Roundup, and the DNR and the EPA are fine with it? At the end of the day, the multinational chemical companies like Bayer should be held accountable the same as the rest of us. To top it off, how can Bayer lobby our legislators with a bill to eliminate the lawsuits brought forth of damages and cancer diagnosis caused by their products? This is not right. This is not right for the families who have suffered so much already from the loss of family. Many of these lawsuits have been proven to have merit. Iowans are in similar situations, deserve to be made whole. There are several jobs that deal with chemicals produced under the Bayer name, where it's a farmer doing application himself, someone who has ran a chemical tender for a co-op, someone who has bought a small amount of spray to spray the cracks in their sidewalks to control unwanted weeds. Or how do the majority of the people ingest chemicals through their water? We might find it hard to find workers who will apply these products if limitation or compensation for people who get sick and develop cancer or health effects from these products. What would it be worth to you if you had lost a loved one to cancer? My sister Tammy passed as so many people depended on her for support, being a nurse, right down to the people who depended on her to pay her mortgage, her auto payment as well. How do you place a value on that? Bayer shouldn't be writing rules for us here in Iowa. It's up to a judge to decide whether a lawsuit has merit, and a bill like SF 2412 shouldn't take away Iowans' right to pursue an option. That's why I'm strongly urging our state representatives to not support any bill similar to SF 2412. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nick, for sharing with us, sharing your personal story. And thank you to Rob and Dr. Deming for sharing with us as well tonight. There's a lot of information that we get to learn about the impacts of pesticides on our communities and those that we care about. I do see we have some questions coming in the Q&A box, so thank you all for utilizing that. Please continue to put your questions in here. I'm going to pass things off to Michaelan to go ahead and help facilitate our Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick, and everyone who's spoken tonight. I was just collecting questions from the chat. There have been a lot of good questions, and Rob has stepped in and answered quite a few of them, but I do want to pass it to Rob. If you don't mind bring your answers to the first two questions, that would be great.
There we go. I think we might have an echo. A couple people might still have their mics on, and we need to shut those down. There we go. All right, so one of the questions we had early on was asking whether the bill specifically omitted the Chinese companies from the bill. And the answer to that is yes, last year there was a version of the bill that listed ChemChina as the lone exception. There was some discussion that probably couldn't stand up in court because you can't necessarily isolate one company versus another multinational company. But that's not the one that actually had the final consideration. And it is not showing up in bills that are popping up so far this year. So Missouri's bill does not have that right now. Michael has just noted that Idaho did not have that exception, nor did Florida. So we already have 3 states with active bills with file numbers on them, and none of them include that exception. The second question we got was asking whether or not Bayer could put a warning on the label, even if the EPA does not, for example, defining glyphosate as a carcinogen. Well, the use labels are created by EPA. And Bayer could and should instruct the EPA if they know there's an additional warning that should be on the product. And the typical process is if the producer goes to EPA with an additional warning for the registration, the EPA will respond and add it. And they would not say no. If the producer and the owner of the registration says, hey, you need to put possible carcinogen on this product that we provide through the registration you've given us, then it would show up on the use label. So that's how that would work. And I think those are the first 2 that I had to deal with.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll jump in and answer a question quick. Michael asked if there's a plan to make these slides available to groups and individuals fighting the Cancer Gag Act and make them available to all legislators. We can absolutely share a copy of our slides from this evening with everyone following this call. And we've also already been in meetings with several legislators, plan to meet with a lot more, and we have lots of resources to support meeting with legislators and talking to legislators. And I'll pass it briefly to Dr. Deming to answer a question from Holly about the most common types of cancer here in Iowa.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Iowa and the United States are the same. The 3 most common cancers that we see are breast cancer, prostate cancer, and lung cancer. They're not the most deadly of the cancers. Lung cancer is, but colorectal cancer and pancreas cancers are high up in terms of the list of cancers that cause death. So that's the factual answer to what are the most common causes. If you go to Cancer in Iowa 2024, you can get the list of the top, I think, 15, both in incidence and in death.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deming. I'll jump in again and add a little bit of an additional answer from Angela's question, how many votes do we need to kill the Cancer Gag Act? As Michael answered, we need 51 votes on the House floor to stop the Cancer Gag Act in that phase. We're not as focused on the Senate and want everyone on this call to know that if the news comes that this piece of legislation passes in the Senate, which we have some anticipation could happen pretty early, to just be aware that that does not mean the fight is over. It's what happened last year. And we have a real path to victory in the House. We'd need 12 votes to stop this in the House Agriculture Committee and 13 votes to stop it in the Ways and Means Committee. Those were the 2 committees where it was introduced last year. and hoping to secure, 51 votes against this in the House. And I will pass it to Nick. If you could answer Melinda's question, has your family's water ever been tested for nitrates and/or pesticides? And if not, do you know anything about, the water in your community?
Well, my parents found out just recently that it's a free service that the counties do offer, or Hamilton and Hardin do offer. So it's relatively new to them. They have had high levels of arsenic and bacteria, which I imagine comes from the animal fecal that's being applied to the fields. But I myself, this sounds crazy, but I'm scared to have my water tested. I just have my acreage paid off this last couple of years, and what would I do if it said I couldn't drink my water? I do bathe in it. I do make my coffee with it. It is heated up to, I don't know, whatever temperature when you brew coffee. But when the grandkids come over, no, they get bottled water. But I'm scared to death for the future of my grandkids. When we was little, our entertainment used to be going out to the creeks and seining minnows and tadpoles, playing behind the co-op where we shouldn't have been, catching tadpoles, and there'd be lasso and Roundup cans back there. And why people let us play back there, I have no idea. But if you go out to those same creeks today and just sit there and watch, there are no tadpoles, there are no minnows in these creeks. These creeks are dying, and we're seeing the kids that used to play in those creeks dying too. So I do need to get my water tested. It just seems to be a shame that you got to buy water in the store. So
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. I very much agree. And Iowans, as residents of Iowa, we are paying the cost to clean up our water to the tune of $66 million annually, and paying, even with the free programs, those are funded with our tax dollars. So we're paying to have our water tested and paying for safe drinking water in the form of bottled water or water filters. And, the burden shouldn't be left to us. While we are paying all of these costs, corporations are making massive profits and not paying for, their share, and leaving the burden, the risk to be paid in our lives, in our quality of life, in our natural environments. And, it's going to take a lot of fighting to change the system. It's at the end of the day, a policy choice. It's not just the cost of doing business. It's how this business model has been set up by our elected officials. I think there was one more question I wanted to put forward. I think this one could be passed to Rob. When is the federal government supposed to come out again with a determination on the danger of Roundup?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say I have to look that up because there are so many chemicals. I don't have all the dates or what the rotation is in my head. And again, in this case, I think we got to be clear about something. It's not necessarily Roundup per se, it's glyphosate. And Roundup products now, if you were to go to the store today and buy Roundup for home use, you will find that they don't have glyphosate as the active ingredient in those chemicals anymore. You will find that there are probably one of three different active ingredients. And at least one of them is actually a little bit more dangerous than glyphosate is. But it doesn't have the history of lawsuits or research showing those problems. So in answer to your question, it would be most optimistically in the next 5 to 10 years, but often these things get pushed back. and 15 years is really optimistic with these cycles. So yeah, it's going to be a while, I suspect.
Thank you for that answer. Even though I'm sure it probably wasn't what the person who asked it was hoping for. There are so many great questions coming up in the chat, but I think because we're getting towards the end of the call, we'll probably wrap up and talk a little bit about other ways to take action. And following the call, we'll save the chat and all the questions and do our best to reach back out to you. But most of the speakers this evening are also organizers. We're very accessible. We love to hear from people. So if you have questions, if you have ideas, if you want to chat more, feel free to get in touch with us. And Ava, if you click, I think there's a couple of things that'll pop up. Perfect. So we've dropped the link for this rally that we're hosting on February 10th a number of times. And I wanted to drop 2 additional links. We are also going to be hosting an art build and organizing meeting at Progress, Iowa on January 24th. That's a Friday. And this event will be open to everyone. We're going to be working from 3 to 6:30. You don't have to come for the whole time, but we'll be putting together some big, beautiful banners, some paper mache, roundup props, and other creative things that will make our action on February 10th look powerful and visibly demonstrate what we're there to demand. And we will also be working with other members of our coalition to host weekly action calls through the legislative session. So every Thursday at 5:30, we'll be getting together to share updates and get folks plugged into taking action, whether that's phone banking or text banking to turn out for the 10th, getting in contact with key legislators, or other kinds of organizing. There will be lots of work to do and we need lots of help. So we hope that you all can join us as we build out this campaign and stop the Cancer Gag Act at the state capitol this year. And we appreciate everyone for joining us. So thank you so much.